Hi, welcome back. Today we are talking about self love, a topic that I'm very enthusiastic about and is also a subject I think it's very common today to talk about it more in popular psychology, but today we are looking from the lens of clinical psychology and really about practices and exercises that can be used within psychotherapy or like the therapy you use as a psychologist. We're gonna do that by discussing more simple. I do this because it's simpler in a way that it won't take up a lot of time in your therapy sessions. Clients can do this at home, a lot they can do on their own, and you can add that easily into every kind of therapy. And we're gonna talk more about in-depth approaches that include much more about kind of therapeutic healing with trauma therapy or meeting childhood needs. And that will take up more space within the therapy and can also be like the complete goal for therapy. So that's the distinction I made. And let's go. So as you can see here, this is shortly the differences that I came up with. I do find it important to say something about self-love and how I view it, or I think from a clinical perspective, is that sometimes self-love has a bit of the connotation that it is about going to the sauna or buying yourself like a nice scrub and doing that, which can all be self-loving practices. But I think in the base, it has much more to do with kind of building up an inner voice that is based on kindness and love for yourself. And that a lot of people need that because unfortunately, throughout our life, we also have built up some kind of inner critic. And with that inner kindness, self-loving voice, it gives the inner critic a little company. I think over time, it can also inhibit the inner critic. So that's like one part of self-love I think is very important. And the other one is like in the base, at least that's my belief, is that all humans have the same word. Unfortunately, throughout life, things can happen to you that damage your self-worth or like how you feel about it. But every person has that same self-worth within them. And I think it is more about getting connected to that again. And that people call those practices self-love by now. I think it's only good that more people are focused on it, but I think it would be, it would make it too simple to just say, hey, go a day to the sauna and that's what self-love is. Self-love can be quite a hard practice. However, it is learnable, it is teachable, and we're gonna discuss these for the more simple exercises. And with simple, again, it's meant that it is time efficient. We're gonna talk about mirror exercises, building a quality list, including photos of your younger self, going on dates with yourself, and searching for self-loving content. And in general, I think that how I also often explain it to clients is that it can really be as if learning a new language. I'm currently starting to learn Spanish, and to be honest, it feels quite uncomfortable. It feels uncomfortable to speak that language. You're like, oh, this feels a bit not fitting. And that's often also what clients say, right? Yeah, but it feels so weird to say, I love myself or like this. I found it quite helpful to use that metaphor, like, yeah, but if you're learning Spanish, it's also really uncomfortable. And sometimes that takes years of practice, learning languages, listening to a certain language. And it is the same with self-love. Like, it is not about just doing one simple thing. It is built with practice over time. Do it again in a lot of different contexts by hearing self-loving content, other people, by observing other people who already have like a higher inner kind voice. So having that said, let's go to the first exercises. And I think that this picture is already a beautiful representation of mirror exercises. So in the base, you can, of course, come up with countless of ways of letting your clients do some mirror exercise. In the base, you ask your client to, at home, stand in front of the mirror. It can be with clothes on, it can be naked. It's a bit, depends on what you also think that is the best way of doing this, and of course what the client feels comfortable with. And then there are several options. I think you can just assign more exercises that are about meeting whatever is coming up. So, hey, I just want to stand in front of a mirror, set a timer for 2 minutes, and whatever comes up is okay. So if you feel emotions arise, that's okay. If thoughts come up, that's okay. If like the grocery list comes up, that's also okay. Another version of that is that you let them write down whatever comes up in their brain. But you can also assign already a more neutral or positive assignment to it. So, for example, I want you to write down 5 things that you are content with. Or I want you to write down 5 things that you like about yourself. For some people, this is really hard. And what I have found that is a great adjustment in the beginning is, like, I want you to write down 5 body parts, and I want you to write the positive function of that. They can even Google that, but do it in front of the mirror, but they can Google it. For example, my eyes, they enable me to see. My stomach, my bowel inside my stomach help me to process food. I like my ears, they make me hear. So that is often a very good exercise if the threshold is a bit too high, to start with more positive, naming positive things for the first time. Another one is the perspective of change. So often the clients that we see are kind of much harder for themselves than for others. They are really measuring with 2 different measurements. So they can be kind for someone else, but it's harder for themselves. So what you ask them is, I want you to picture your loved one, a friend, a child, someone you're a fan of. What would you say to that person? What would you say about their body or about their appearance? What would you say about their inner qualities? Write them down and say them out loud to yourself in front of the mirror. To motivate your clients, again, you can use the Spanish metaphor. Just say, it is normal if this is uncomfortable. We are just starting to build up this self-loving language. It might be very uncomfortable. Just keep going. You're still building up that new inner voice. And I think this is a great way of starting. And I really like these kind of drawings. They are made, I think she called Draw-See Minimal. I will link it here because I kind of used her art. So let's give her a shout out. And this says, like, this is the beginning of loving yourself. Welcome home. And I think that kind of sums up what it is really about. And also what I felt like welcome home is also feeling like that sense of self-worth has always been there and no one can change that. Like, no amount of bad things, no amount of criticism can really change that fundamental part of yourself. It's just about reconnecting it again. And I feel like welcome home is a very beautiful representation of it. Let's go to the second one, building a quality list. I think this is quite a normal exercise, like name 1 positive thing. However, what I do find is an important adjustment is that it's a great way to start, to let people write down 1 thing they are content with or proud with at the end of the day. But please, if you see the client a week after that, make the adjustments to inner qualities. So yes, okay, it's wonderful. You said no to your friend. And what does that say about you? That's like, okay, you did your homework. And what does that say about you? So really try to connect it with like the inner qualities of someone. Because probably you have observed that as well. It is not weird in the society we grow up in, is that people are really, that inner kindness is often very linked to high outcomes or results. So make it about the inner quality. And if you do this after a couple of weeks, what is really cool is that clients get like a list like this. It's like an inner quality list. And that's actually the self-loving language that we want. It is so frustrating for me to see that sometimes they ask people on the street these interviews, like, can you name some positive things about themselves? And how hard that is for people. And if you ask them some negative things, it comes out immediately. That's just because the language isn't there yet. So this really helps that build it up. So make it about the inner qualities. So not only the positive thing, connect it to the inner qualities. Of course, you are like allowed to do whatever you want, but I feel like this is just such a small adjustment that can really help with these exercises. This is like what I'm just trying to explain. This is a great metaphor. Use it. And then we go to the inclusion of photos of the younger self. This can be sometimes a bit painful for people, but I think that sometimes people in their adult form, like in their current self, agree sometimes with the content of the inner critic. And I feel like bringing in younger self, now it almost sounds like a bit of a manipulation tactic, but it can be really helpful to be like, oh, but like, no, I would never say that to a young child, or, oh, I feel really bad that I'm saying this to little me. So you just ask your client to find or bring a photo of their younger selves and ask them, okay, in which places you find it hardest to be kind to yourself, and there you can hang the photo. So in this example, I placed a picture of myself, of little me, on the mirror. And if this is like too hard to do for clients, you can also ask them to hang a picture of someone that they love or that they are a fan of, and ask them, okay, but everything that you say or agree to about yourself, you also have to say out loud to that person. So if you say to yourself, oh, I look ugly today, you have to say that out loud to that person as well. And people really start to feel like, oh, but I would never do that. So this is a little example of that. I'm like a big Taylor Swift fan, so imagine that I put a photo of Taylor Swift. Like, I wouldn't tell her like, hey, you did such a bad job today, like you should have done much more. So it is a little tweak to the same exercise. Then we have to go on a date with yourself. So that is a bit of going to the sauna for a day, but it is not the only thing that consists of self-love, but it is more about spending quality time with yourself. Like if you want to build up a relationship with a new partner or with a new friend, what helps is to connect with them, right? You talk to them, you spend time with them, you are interested in them. The same with kind of building up that connection with yourself and that inner kind voice. You have to learn things about you, and doing things solo is a great way of learning more about yourself and about getting out of your comfort zone into just, having quality time with yourself. And I really like that. Like if you see, like if you give yourself a hug, one thing I really like is that, do you see that that's almost a heart in itself? Yeah. Call me, is that a hopeless romantic? No, but I do feel that sometimes giving yourself a hug is actually a great way of self-care. We're going further. Here you can see like another version of the same idea is to create a jar, like spend some time in the session writing up all these solo date ideas. You put them all in a jar and a client picks one every month, every week. And by that, you don't really have to spend a lot of time on it within the therapy. And clients are still like building up that connection with the self. And last but not least is like you don't have to invent the wheel for yourself. There are a lot of books written about self-love. I really also like the idea of listening to your favorite artists, like find lyrics in there that are about self-love or inner kindness. Listen to like your favorite sport character. Listen to how a friend talks to themselves. Like make an artwork of all these social media creative works. Doesn't really matter, but like engage with self-loving content. And again, it's the same as learning a language. Then it also helps to listen to a podcast or to read a book or listen to other people speaking that language. The same with building up that inner kind voice. And it is also modeling. When you didn't grow up in a household or in an environment where it was normal to be really kind to yourself and to be your own cheerleader, it helps to see other people do it later in life so that you can kind of get that idea through modeling. Okay. So, in short, there are a lot of different ways to help clients to do small exercises daily or throughout your therapy trajectory without it needing to be like the main topic of your conversations or the therapy that you are providing. And another thing that I wanted to include is maybe it would be a good idea to do some of these exercises for yourself, especially if you felt a bit uncomfortable throughout watching this. That might be a sign that, hey, maybe it would be good to do something for yourself or to find a way to also build up your inner kindness and self-loving language. Because in the end, yes, therapy is about learning techniques and protocols, but it is also about the therapeutic relationship. And in that, you are your own instrument. So it is so important to invest in your own mental health and to invest in your own inner kindness, I would say. Let's go to the more in-depth exercises. So the more in-depth exercises, I think this aligns maybe more with the work that you might do much more with your clients already. And I think both can be important, but sometimes you will notice like, hey, these small exercises that asks too much of the client, or there's not enough foundation yet to work with, or you just feel like, yeah, there needs to be a bit more to help a client build up that inner kind voice, or to let them reconnect with that sense of self-worth. Because unfortunately, even though our default or like our baseline when we are born is that you're okay, that you're lovable, that you're enough, throughout life, a lot can happen. And in clients that we sometimes see with like very traumatic backgrounds that have been filled with abuse, neglect, these very negative core beliefs or schemas can be formed where a person, like, it completely sees the world, experiences the world throughout this lens of I am worthless, I'm unlovable, I am a failure. And that's like one part of it, but it could also be that you just notice that clients have this very strong inner critical or inner punishing voice. It's almost as if literally like that, like we call that more the parent mode within schema therapy, but as if there is just like that inner bully, right? That's just commenting on the client's choices, behaviors, looks constantly in a very denigrating way, and that is often the result of very impactful negative experiences, also such as abuse and neglect. I think these can all be kind of parameters to think about. Okay, probably with a couple mirror exercises or like an activity jar, you feel that is almost as if you might not be taking it seriously enough. And that's also not the message you want to convey to clients, right? And I don't think that people will do that. So yeah, what are the options to do then? I think one of the most common ways is, you see that in most trauma therapies, right, is that you start to question yourself and lay the puzzle with the client. Okay, but what happened to you? Like, what happened or what didn't happen that should have happened in the way of love, connection, guidance that makes you feel like this in general, or made this very strong inner punishing voice develop. Most therapies will use kind of a way of making that timeline, or like that can be literally in a timeline like this, or in written form, or with emotional, like the imaginary rescripting kind of way with like the emotional bridges. Every trauma therapy probably has a different way of getting that list, but in the base, that's what you try to make a bit more sense of, okay, how did this develop over time? And if you have done that, I think this is something that most probably have to do with clients. I think with clients, the group that would fit like the previous category, people could probably make a timeline themselves or something like that. But I think with this group of people who endured a lot during their childhoods, is that often the knowledge about what is healthy self-image, or what is healthy development, or what are normal things to get from a parent or to get from life, that's often not really there. So please do this together with your client, right? Like from schema therapy, we would say like the healthy adult self might not be there enough to kind of see how this developed. And when you do that together, I think that also makes it clear for the client where the therapy has to focus on. So in-depth exercises are probably the trauma therapy, right? And the method, I think, is less important than the actual result of it. So whether you do that with prolonged exposure or CBT trauma therapy, EMDR, schema therapy, psychodynamics, narrative exposure therapy, I think that's like whatever fits your client, whatever fits you, whatever is normal in the country that you practice in. But I think you can understand what I mean with that. So these exercises take up more therapy time and are often the main focus of therapy. And you hope that with time, several things happen together. Like, I think over time that inner loving voice or that inner kindness start to grow. The inner punisher might become a bit less. They start to develop more connection through that sense of self-worth. And it might have a different name, but in the base, that is about cultivating self-love, right? It is about cultivating appreciation for yourself. And for some clients, this might take 10 to 20 sessions. For others, this might take up several years. I think in general, for all humans, this is not like an end station that you can reach. Like, I think the most healthy or developed people can't say, I love myself, and that there is like a dot at the end of the sentence. Like, life happens. We are all facing new challenges. And I think it's a lifelong process to kind of connect to yourself and make sure that you build up that inner kind voice. So when you are deciding or thinking about which exercises are the best fit for your client, I think these are some good things to consider. First of all, of course, the wishes of the client. the financial budget, the time, the case conceptualization. I just hope that this video at least inspired you to make self-love and building up that inner kindness and inner self-loving voice like a team in every treatment, regardless of the mental health condition, regardless of the ask for help. Just even if you only mentioned it a couple times, like I feel that gives clients this idea that, okay, yeah, this is a good thing to develop. This is the take-home message. So I hope you read it. And last but not least, I hope that you, and also for myself, is just to also practice what we preach, right? Take good care of yourself. Do some self-loving exercises. I know it helped me a lot throughout, like I would say the last 5 years. Kind of the perspective change I used a lot to build up that inner voice, to kind of feel like, oh, hey, no, to my friend, I would say this. Or it would not only be a different message, but it would be a much kinder tone. And speaking to myself, learning to practice that, to speak to myself in that same tone, it makes such a difference. It gives so much more freedom. And I wish that for every human, including all psychologists. I almost feel like that was like a whole blurting out of sentences. And yeah, I really like this topic. In general, if you liked it as well, try to like, subscribe, click on some buttons, share it with colleagues. It would be much, much appreciated. And for now, I'm wishing you